I declare the motion passed. Waterworks Amendment Bill 2017. Members' motion. Motion to be moved by Honorable Charles Peter MOK to summon the Secretary for Justice to attend before the Council on the 28th of February 2018 to testify and produce documents. Members who wish to speak on the motion will please press the Request to Speak button. I call upon Honorable Charles Peter MOK to speak and move the motion. Mr. Charles MOK. President, I move that the motion as printed on the agenda be passed, and that pursuant to Article 73, 5 and 10 of the Basic Law of the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region of the People's Republic of China, this Council summoned the Secretary for Justice to attend before the Council on the 28th of February 2018 to testify and to produce all relevant papers, books, records or documents regarding issues in relation to whether she is still fit for the position of Secretary for Justice, including the unauthorized building structures in her residence, the process of purchasing the property concerned, the company or companies under her name, the public works-related business of the company under her husband's name, and whether she was involved in any concealment of facts regarding the aforesaid issues and in the process of integrity check and all other related matters. President, since assuming office, Ms. Teresa Chang has been embroiled in a storm. As the SJ, she should be the one who should abide by the law, and she should defend the rule of law in Hong Kong without fear or favor. But everything that she has done is dealing a blow to the core value of Hong Kong people and the core value of the rule of law. She has broken the law knowingly. Does it mean that she should still be fitted to hold the post of Secretary for Justice? Should she be fit to hold the position where she should be the one defending the rule of law? We should have high expectations of her than of other public officials. It seems society is becoming more unfair. Those who are rich and famous can break the law, and we are told to be tolerant towards them. But who will be tolerant towards other people in society, like Agnes Chow and other people who have been unfairly disqualified? Who would be tolerant to other members of the public who would like to vote for Agnes Chow? The Secretary said she cannot accept that she is a person of no integrity. If that's the case, please come here to the Legislative Council to give an account as to why she decided to cover up. We found that the Secretary has been taking us down the garden path, and she has acted like a human tape recorder. Is that something a person with integrity should do? We believe that the Secretary is a competent and capable person. Why doesn't she face up to this issue? On the 29th of January in the AJLS panel, in that special meeting of the panel, we asked her many questions. We asked about integrity check, whether she talked about the UBWs. She did not answer. We asked her whether when she signed the mortgage deed, whether she knew that there were UBWs in the properties concerned. She did not answer. And we asked her when was the first instance she knew about UBWs in her Tin Mun property. She did not answer. We are now moving this summons motion. We should carry it so that she would answer all those questions. Right now, we are discharging our duty to monitor the administration here in the Legislative Council. And through this motion, we want to show that Hong Kong will not allow those who are rich and powerful should be tolerated, but to the average person, we are suppressing them. I hope the public will understand that now that we are taking this step. But before that, we have asked the Secretary to go to the House Committee to give an account, and the pro-establishment camp said no. And we asked her to go to the AJLS panel, but she did not furnish information. And then outside the Council, she said many things about the properties like peeling an onion. But still, she resorted to making a press release in the deep of night, and then she went to a radio station program instead of coming to the Legislative Council. So she was not coming clean. And about the many queries about the UBWs, I'm now detailing them below. First of all, is she breaking the law knowingly? President, as a senior counsel and also a civil engineer, the Secretary also wrote the book that it is called the construction law and practice in Hong Kong. We have held that book in our hands because it's in the library of the Legislative Council. In that book, there are case law quoted, and that shows that the Secretary has a deep understanding into the law and construction practice in Hong Kong. Therefore, we want to ask the question, is it that she actually had known about the problems with the property, and it's just that she did not take action? And also, did she tell a lie? The Secretary said many times that she bought the Tuen Mun property, house number 4 at Villa de Mer as is. But then the media looked up satellite pictures over the last 10 years, and it was found that it was only after house number 4 was bought by the Secretary in 2008 that there were these UBWs, including the rooftop structure, which is a glass house. This is not the same as what the Secretary said, that she did not do any structural changes. Also, house number 3 was bought by Mr. Otto Poon, the husband of the Secretary, in 2012, and it was altered. So it looked like house number 4 with a glass house on the rooftop. And on the 6th and on the 10th of January, the Secretary explained twice. And even on the 10th, she said that in October 2008, she bought the property on an as-is basis. And after that, she did not make any structural changes to the house, meaning that the rooftop structure and the basement had been there before she bought the house. But then she said afterwards that house number 4 and Mr. Otto Poon's house number 3, there was this door between them, and it was built afterwards, but not by her, she said. She said she did not build that door between the two houses, but of course she said she knew about it. Well, she did not give a clear account about all these issues, and we had many question marks in our mind, more than before we heard her. And also, was there deliberate cover-up in the mortgage deed? The company that was used was Sparkle Star Development. She spent $26 million to buy house number 4, and on the 23rd of December 2008, she signed the mortgage deed from Standard Chartered Bank, and as the owner, the sole owner of the company, to say that in house number 4, it comprises a ground floor, a first floor, a second floor, and a roof together with a garden and a carport, instead of including a basement. And also in a previous plan, it was only shown that there was the ground floor, first floor, second floor, etc. without a basement. These assignment and mortgage deeds are legal documents. The Secretary is, of course, a senior counsel, and it is not possible for her to overlook such important details. And it's impossible for her to let us know that she did not know whether there was a basement when buying the property. And to decide how many stories there are in a house, well, you just have to look at it with your naked eye, and it requires only common sense to count the number of floors. You don't need to have professional knowledge. When you live in a house and there is a basement of 500 square feet, and that size is almost the size of a flat for many people, but then this is not included in the assignment deed. Any person, not to mention a professional, will know about it. If the Secretary deliberately signed the deed knowing that there was the basement, but it was not mentioned, then it would amount to the offense of obtaining pecuniary interest by deception under the theft ordinance, because she might have deceived the bank. And also in the integrity checking process, did she talk about the UBWs? Many officials were embroiled in UBW sagas. Mr. Henry Tang, the then CS4A, who participated in the CE election in 2012, and also the CE who was elected in the end, CY Leung, both were exposed to have UBWs in their properties. And then Mr. Henry Tang's wife was convicted of having UBWs, and many accountability officials were also exposed to have UBWs at their properties. Now, is it that until this day, the integrity checking process does not even raise those questions? We have to know whether the S4J gave an account of her UBWs during integrity checking, and that is why on the 24th of January, I asked an oral question. Mr. Patrick Nip, the SCMA, said that he would have to keep everything confidential. I almost thought that we had an executive operating in secrecy. This is a vetting process. And we are asking whether that is a problematic process. How can you say everything has to be kept confidential and not allow members to understand whether the integrity checking system was problematic? Therefore, there are queries to be raised that the vetting process is fraught with loopholes and whether the civil servants who were responsible for that were negligent of duty. Is it that they did not dare to ask those questions of a high-ranking official? And also, was the CE in the know in the entire matter? Did someone hide the facts from the public deliberately? I hope the pro-establishment camp will understand that we are targeting the system. We are not talking about just this case or any particular person. I hope the pro-establishment camp will also speak on this integrity check issue, that you should not get personal but talk about the system. And even if the pro-democratic camp is raising it, you should not just refuse to speak on it. And also, Mr. Otto Poon has been given many government projects, and we like to know whether these contracts represent any conflict of interest. According to the logistics department, Mr. Otto Poon has been given at least 24 government projects, totaling over $800 million. Mr. Otto Poon is the husband of the S4J, and he is the founder and also the chairman incumbent of ATAL Engineering Group. And the member companies of ATAL Engineering Group, the ATAL technology company, has been listed as a supplier, and it shows that the contact person and also the principal IT director, Ms. Poon Wing-yan, of course, she is the eldest daughter of Mr. Otto Poon.
The government has works contracts worth hundreds of millions of dollars. There have been so many white elephant projects wasting taxpayers' hard-earned money. That's already a fact. But if there should be even more conflict of interest involved in these projects, how would the public view the matter? And how would the public view rule of law and impartiality in Hong Kong? What about the trade, the engineering sector? What would they think? Now, Mr. Frank Chan was invited to Mr. Poon's home for dinner. Oh, and that's fine. So does it mean that any engineering company boss could invite him to dinner? Don't the trade doesn't the trade consider there is a need to be careful because of possible conflict of interest? And then Mr. Otto Poon's company was also involved in the Almond Loan corruption case in Macau. I won't go into the details, but these media reports show that companies under Mr. Poon's group or even Mr. Poon himself might have been involved. As many from the Democratic camp said, doesn't matter how many times the SJ offer apology, now she knows the law and she breaks the law knowingly. Is it appropriate for someone like her to remain the Secretary for Justice? Now, usually we would appeal to the pro-establishment camp to support this motion, but of course everyone knows that the pro-establishment camp will try to defend her and make sure this motion is voted down. They will continue to block us, the Democratic camp, from monitoring the government. They will continue to block us from getting to the truth of the matter. Just a few weeks ago, some pro-establishment camp were rather aggressive in the way they commented on the matter, but recently, in the past week, they have become quiet again, so I have no expectation of them. But I just want to tell the Chief Executive and the government this in the debate, that we will not condone anyone with power not to follow the not to observe the law. it's very likely that this motion will be voted on because of the pro-establishment camp. But I and other members of the democratic camp will continue to press the Secretary for Justice for answers. We would not let this go. I think the government is now trying to test the memory of the public and us. They want to drag this on so as to water down the matter, and then it will just go away. No, but you will only arouse more suspicion, and you will only make us to wonder if anything is being covered up, and it will only lead us to question further the integrity of the government. I now propose question 2 that the motion moved by Mr. Charles MOK be passed. Chief Secretary for Administration. Mr. Charles MOK goes by Article 73, Bracket 3 and Bracket 5 of the Basic Law to summon the Secretary for Justice to attend the Council meeting attend before the Council on the 28th of February to testify and to produce all relevant papers, books, records, or documents regarding issues in relation to whether she is still fit in the position of Secretary for Justice, including the unauthorized building structures in her residence, the process of purchasing the property concerned, the company or companies under her name, the public works related business of the company under her husband's name, and whether she was involved in any concealment of facts regarding the aforesaid issues and in the process of integrity check and all other related matters. On behalf of the SL government, I would appeal to members to oppose this motion. Now, Article 73 of the Basic Law empowers members to ask questions of the government on their work, in particular Article 73 bracket 5. So it does not really apply in this case. Since January, there have been media reports on the properties of the SJ and the properties and business of her spouse. Over the past few weeks, the SJ has publicly given account of the case, and she has offered sincere apology as well. And then there was a special meeting of the panel on administration of justice and legal services on the 29th of January, and she answered various questions. To sum up the facts, she bought the property as if she does not know the former owner. And as soon as the SJ was alerted to the case on the 5th of January, she immediately reported to the district executive. And then she cooperated fully with the buildings department to inspect the property and to carry out rectification works. The rectification works have been approved by the buildings department and works have started. She will rectify the situation as soon as possible. Now, when the secretary bought the property, she was not aware of the UBW bills, but as she said, she would not make any excuse about this, and she would take responsibility for not having carefully reviewed the property. As for the property of her spouse, it was also bought as is. They've also commissioned authorized persons to carry out comprehensive inspection, and they will also start rectification works as soon as possible. And finally, to avoid any conflict of interest or undue perception problems, the Secretary for Justice is already entrusted the Director of Public Prosecution and the Solicitor General to deal with all matters in relation to her UBWs, say in terms of prosecution and so on. The SJ would not be involved in the decision-making process and the relevant legal process. Now, on the 5th of January, the Chief Executive announced the appointment of the CPG for Ms. Teresa Jiang to become the Secretary for Justice. The appointment took effect on the 6th of January. And on the 6th of January, the Chief Executive swore in Secretary Teresa Jiang as Secretary for Justice. She is a politically appointed official. But I hope the public will assess her on her work performance in future. We do appreciate that there is room for improvement in the way the SJ handled her property transactions. Now, but then there's no evidence to show that the matter is in any way in conflict with SJ performing her duties. As for the UBWs on her property, the Buildings Department will continue to act in accordance with the law and take suitable action. The SJ is cooperating fully with the Buildings Department, and she will carry out rectification as soon as possible. So, about summoning Secretary for Justice to attend before the Council on the 28th of February 2018 to testify on whether she is still fit for the position of Secretary for Justice, there is no need at all for this motion. So on behalf of the SL government, I appeal to members to oppose this motion. I will now listen to the views of members before I give a reply. Thank you.
Mr. Avin Young. Thank you, President. On behalf of the Civic Party, I would like to say that we support the motion moved by Mr. Charles MOK. Before I deliver my speech, let me briefly respond to the CS4A's speech made on behalf of the SL government. He said that now Mr. Charles MOK wants to invoke Basic Law 73/5, and it's not applicable. But we are talking about the personal integrity of the Secretary for Justice and whether she can effectively discharge her duty as Secretary for Justice. It is precisely on this ground, for this reason, that we would like to have cross-spectrum political support from the parties here so that the S4J can discharge her duties effectively. In the past 2 weeks, the pro-establishment camp members have been working hard to filibuster so that the time allowed for this motion has been shortened to the minimum. They spoke very actively on every item on the agenda, whether it's employment amendment bill, legal aid, pneumoconiosis, dutiable commodities. They were very active in speaking. Well, it's really a rare occurrence. However anxious they are to protect the government and the officials, UBWs are UBWs, facts are facts, what would happen will happen. Let me now set out the chronology of the UBW incident involved by the SOJ. Some are well-known facts, but I hope that, President, you allow me to do this because setting out the chronology will be helpful in understanding my arguments. On the 5th of January, the SOJ was appointed. On the same day, there was a press report saying that her house in Tuen Mun had UBWs, and then in the press conference next day, the SOJ said the UBWs were there when she bought it, and also there were media compared aerial photos, knowing that there were changes in the past 10 years. It was expected that the Secretary built some of the UBWs herself. And it was reported that in 2008, in the mortgage deed signed with the bank, there was no mention of the basement. And in the lease, in the assignment, there was the assets. On the 21st of January, she disclosed that for her Southern District Party, there were 3 UBWs. And also there was an assets clause in the assignment. And she said he did not know that was UBWs. The assignment was signed by Mr. Otto Poon, her husband. On the 24th of January, there were photos published in the media regarding the basement. It was 1,000 square feet with band rooms, restroom, and TV room. And on the 26th of January, it was reported that there were UBWs in all the properties owned by the Secretary. Well, I set out the chronology with such detail because I want everyone to pay attention that the most common reference was media reports as well as UBWs. Well, it's been a month since then. We have been trying to find more information through in the public domain. We were able to find the details. Press freedom is one of the reasons why Hong Kong has been successful. It's one of our core values. on behalf of the civic body, I would like to thank the media for so dutifully exposing the truth for us. Without their hard efforts, and even if the secretary is in front of us and we stare at each other, we would not have known that this particular defender of our legal system would owns properties that have so many UBWs. She is one of the most senior political appointed officials, and then we can only rely on the information provided by the media when it comes to questions about her integrity. The secretary did convene press briefings, and also he attended the AGL meeting on the 29th of January, talking about the DFJ's policy as well as giving account on the relevant UBWs. But as for the relevant documents such as the assignment, the mortgage deeds, and other documents, the secretary has never produced any for us. That's the reason why we moved this motion. We want the secretary to come to answer questions, and at the same time we also want to get the true copies, the original copies of all the related documents, so that she can convince the people that although there were UBWs, she is still a competent secretary for justice. This motion moved by Mr. Charles MOK is not trying to embarrass the secretary or to have a public trial. We just want all the evidence and documents to be put before every one of us, so that in the coming years she will not have to be facing this accusation of being a secretary with UBWs. So I don't see any reason why the pro-establishment camp should not support this. It's been reported by the media that there might be conflict of interest on the part of Mr. Otto Poon, the secretary of the secretary. Mr. Poon is well acquainted with Mr. Frank Chan. Mr. Chan visited Mr. Poon in his house there, and he was also the witness to her wedding ceremony. And then Mr. Poon won 24 contracts of EMSD, totaling $800 million in value. I'm not trying to speculate that there was something untoward involved, and I won't speculate whether ATL would have enjoyed better business after she became the secretary. But because of the friendship between Mr. Poon and Mr. Chan, there are people who would suspect that there might be something more than meets the eyes. If the government can speculate what one's mentality is about and disqualify an election candidate in an election, why can't the public suspect that there's something amiss between the family members of a senior official and some other official? That's why people of Hong Kong are worried.
Now, apart from showing concern about the relationship between Mr. Frank Chan and Mr. Poon, I also wonder whether the interest of the spouse has been divulged. Now, one point of concern is the integrity checking system of principal officials. The government could just say that this is nothing to be disclosed, but then here we are talking about the total collapse of the integrity check system. Even if it's not a total collapse, at least it shows up the major flaws of the system. During the check, was the party concerned ever asked about UBWs, and did the party concern cover up in any way? I think the public would really want to know if the government continues to duck these issues, what will happen in the long run. Now then, this society will no longer believe in the integrity checking system, and then it's not just the SJ. Even for other principal officials, even though if they have no UBWs, they don't have no problems, no one would believe in the integrity check results. So we're just taking this opportunity or rather we're offering the government this opportunity to come clean so as to restore our confidence in the integrity checking system. Now, Mr. Matthew Cheung was a senior civil servant. I'm sure he also cares very much about the integrity check system. And we don't want any officials in future to be subject to suspicion because we have no longer trust in the integrity checking system. Now, I need to say too, the UBWs involving the SJ are different from the case of the UBWs of by-election candidates. Now, some say that a by-election candidate only demolished the UBWs because he's running for election, and his case is more serious than the SJ's case, who only gave little bits of information when her UBWs are disposed. Now for the by-election candidate, he might not even win the election. In any case, there were encumbrances imposed on his deed, and some years ago he already declared the 5 UBWs to the building department. Well, yes, UBWs remain UBWs, but it's a matter of how these matters are dealt with. Now, for the SJ, every time when the case was exposed, the way she handled it was disappointing. She never gave the impression that she was trying to come clean. Even today, we are still wondering if she's covering up anything. So we want to be fair to the SJ. We want to give her an opportunity to defend herself. And this motion is the best and final opportunity for her to defend herself. So I hope all members in this council across the political spectrum will vote for this motion. Thank you. Mr. Xiu Ka-chun. Thank you, President. I speak in support of Mr. Charles MOK's motion. I support summoning the Secretary for Justice to attend before the Council on the 28th of February to testify as to whether she's still fit for the position of Secretary for Justice, including UBWs in her residence, and whether she was involved in any concealment of facts regarding the aforesaid issues, and she is asked to produce all relevant papers, books, records, and documents. Now, from the 19th to the 24th of January, there was a telephone poll by 731 people about the age of 18 were surveyed. The findings show that for SA, who just assumed post at the beginning of last month, her popularity rating was 38.9, lower than that for the other officials. Chief Secretary has a rating of 52.6. And even for Paul Chan, who was mocked up for stockpiling land or renting out subdivided flats, he has a rating of 48. So they have a popularity rating of at least 9 points higher than that for SJ, who's supposed to be in the honeymoon period. What does that say? That says that her integrity and also has definitely been affected by the UBW fiasco. Now, for any official, usually when they first assume post, there will be a honeymoon period. Even Eddie had a honeymoon period, but then before Teresa Jiang has even been imposed for months, she no longer enjoyed a honeymoon period. So she needs to respond to taxpayers. Now, about the UBWs and about the concealment of facts, is it necessary for her to come and give a full account? Now, if she did try to cover anything, that's is a criminal matter. And if the SJ has nothing to hide, she has a clear conscience, then when the public and now the public have no trust in her, she should seize upon this opportunity to defend herself and explain her case. So I don't want I hope the pro-establishment camp will not just blindly harbor her. You could just you can read into the popularity rating. The public have already abandoned SJ. So if you harbor her, how is she going to carry on with her tenure? Now, in radio, TV programs, the hosts often mock the SJ. and if someone's involved in an accident, the driver, like the case of this driver damaging a bridge because he forgot to tuck away the suspender or whatever, then the driver could have said in defense that because she's too busy, he forgot to do so. So you can see the SJ will continue to be mocked. How she's going to stay in post for 4 years? But then in that case, that driver was not the SJ. He had to be held criminally liable and he had to pay compensation for damaging bridge. But then the SJ continues to refuse to own up to her mistakes. And if you no longer have patience for the SJ, please vote to allow this motion to be passed. Now, the SJ has set a very poor example, many have said. Chief Executive started her term right. I doubt that she's now regretting this. Maybe she felt dragged down by the SJ. But that maybe Theresa Jang will also say to the Chief Executive, it's you who've put me in this position. So we don't know who is responsible. Anyway, the only contribution of the SJ is to give a good counterexample to PR companies. Now, this UBW's fiasco continues to brew, and there are more and more problems exposed. So this is a case study for PR companies, and all the mistakes that could have been, all the blunders that have been made in PR, the SJ has done so. Now, I'm talking about the dignity of the ASL government. It must learn from this case and not let something like this happen again. The C tries to tone down the issue. She said that the SJ was too devoted to her public duties, and she asked for understanding from the public. Well, if Carrie Lam also thinks that the SJ has just made a mistake because she's too busy, why would she tolerate her? Why doesn't she ask her to learn from her mistake? Now, it's not that the public and the media don't accept that SJ is making a mistake, but rather someone wouldn't own up to her mistake. Instead, repeatedly, someone tries to evade the issue and try to muddle through. Now, Theresa Jang is not just a senior counsel, she's also a qualified civil engineer. But then she says she is not familiar with the defense for authorized person. But then the media has exposed her. She and Gary So has co-authored a book called the Construction Law and Practice in Hong Kong. And also she's got a 2-day talk about the roles of professionals in building contracts. And now, how come when something happens, nothing happens, then she's the expert. When something happens, she becomes the victim. Now, for the content, in that talk, there's an explanation of what constitutes a UBW. There's also explanation of the duties of owners in following the law. So Theresa Jang is, in short, a true expert in UBWs. If she had owned up from the very first day, if she had if she had given a full account of the case, it won't have developed into such a fiasco. Now, the matter was exposed, and only after that, this SG tried to provide information in drips and drabs. Obvious that she tried to cover up something. She's just trying to muddle through. Now, if she didn't mean to break the law, why didn't she give a full account of everything? I think the SJ is trying to count on her luck. She's hoping that the media won't find out about those issues. Now, so I have said that it's important that we get to the truth of the matter and put things right. Now, if the SJ is let off the hook, this time she will continue to count on her luck. You see, the SJ always issues statement in the middle of the night. she thought she could then evade questions from the media. So from this point alone, you see the SJ doesn't operate under the sun. Now, we can't have an SJ who blames everything on being busy. It seems that SJ just wants to muddle through, so Hong Kong people eventually forget about it. She doesn't even offer apology and doesn't try to explain anything. So even if she could keep her post, she'll become a lame duck SJ. So if we summons the SJ to come here to give an account, it's only necessary. Chief Executive said the SJ is her most important work partner and her legal advisor as well. But Teresa Zhang, on her first day of becoming SJ, it was exposed that she had UBWs in her property, but she didn't give a full account of the case, and she tried to shy away from reporters. So that's why the fiasco is developed and ballooned, really. Now, UBWs means you're taking up space that does not belong to you legally, and as maybe because you haven't paid the relevant government rent or rates, and so that's actually infringing upon public revenue. Now we're talking about several hundred square feet of basement and rooftop structures, both suspected to be UBWs. Now, Teresa Zhang is both a senior counsel and a civil engineer. If she said that she didn't have the if it said that she didn't have the ability to tell what is a UBW, or if she didn't ask anyone to go and check, well, it's hard to convince anyone. And then she's embarrassing other legal and engineering professionals. Now, even if she really loves that house, she had to buy it. There were 4 opportunities when she could have rectified the problems. The first time, in 2008, after she moved into the property, she could have removed the UBWs. She did not do so.
And then in 2012, everybody was concerned about UBWs of the celebrities. She did not do anything. And then number 3, she was invited to be the S for J, and she could have already engaged an AP to take down the UBW. She didn't do it. And then she got notice from the BD, and still she did not do anything. So what's the conclusion? She broke the law 4 times. It's not about alertness or vigilance. It reflects her weak character and her avarice and her trusting everything to luck. It's just like driving at night. If there is not a speed camera, you would jump the red light and you do it time and again until you are caught. And then you say, okay, I'll rectify it. The S for J has the important responsibility to defend the rule of law. Members of the public expect her to be very strict with herself, and that is not too much to ask about her. If we have this person who will break the law thinking that she can get away with it, I think we are trespassing on the dignity of this post. And I believe it is not just Teresa Chang who should come clean. It includes the chief executive, Carrie Lam. When she was the Secretary for Development, she said that she would be very strict with UBWs, but then of course it came to no avail in the end, and that is a blemish on her career. However, she should be very alert about UBWs, and if Carrie Lam forgot about UBWs during the integrity check, then it is her negligence of duty. And if the CE knew about it, still she appointed her, then the CE was too careless. And then the central authorities had wanted Teresa Chang to take up the post. The CE did not dare say anything. If that's the case, the CE is giving up her responsibility, and Hong Kong people should ask her to come clean. The CE has got off to a good start. She weathered the issues of co-location and disqualification, but because of this, her popularity rating plunged, and the entire accountability system has gone down with her. Mr. Lawrence Locke, who was elected to be the Bar Council member, said that Teresa Chang should let us know her diary so as to give more information to the public. The SJ says that she is busy, and if she could show her diary to show the public how many adjudications, how many mediations, how many court sessions, how many lectures she gives and how many meetings she has every day. Is it that she can show herself to be so busy, more busy than Legislative Council, so she has forgotten about her UBWs? Well, that is not an excuse, of course, but at least she would allow people to understand why she is so lazy and that she has neglected her UBWs. And if people accept the explanation, then the SJ can stay in her post. Therefore, I would say that the SJ should come clean and she should come here to the LegCo to take questions. And those who want to go into politics in order to change Hong Kong, I like to encourage the disqualified member. And I would quote from the Sunflower Campaign of Taiwan and one of the leaders, who is Chen Wei-ting, to say, why are you so tolerant with the rich and powerful, and why are you so harsh towards those who want to change society? CE is saying we should be tolerant and accommodating because otherwise no one would be happy to join the kitchen because of the heat. I'll tell you, it's not that there is heat in the kitchen. It's because the people who manage the kitchen has done a poor job and the kitchen is in a mess, and that is why there is too much heat in the kitchen. We would summon SJ so that the kitchen will not overheat. It is actually one step to right the wrong. I so speak, Mr. Ray Chan. Thank you. President, my stance is very clear. I think the clearest in the entire Democratic camp. I am straightforward. Teresa Chang, step down. If she steps down, we don't need to have this debate. Please come now to bow and step down before the day is over. Then we don't need to carry on with this debate. But of course, she won't do that. Therefore, today we can but support Mr. Charles MOK's motion, moved under Article 73 of the Basic Law to summons the S4J to attend before the Council on the 28th of February 2018. And to produce papers. In fact, in the last month, Hong Kong people have suffered so much. The same for the administration. Today, Mr. Matthew Chang is here to read out scripts on behalf of SJ. He is in a very miserable position. He is following the line to take of the administration. He talks about accommodating, tolerance, and being sympathetic. Well, those come with conditions. The conditions are that you know you are wrong and you come clean on what you have done wrong, and then for the council, for the public to decide how they want to accommodate you and how they will be tolerant towards you. It is not to ask Hong Kong people to close their eyes and ears and not ask questions, but just to trust you. This is not tolerance. What is the strategy of Teresa Chang? She plays as if she doesn't know. If you think she pretends not to know, then it is not a matter of UBWs. UBWs are not major problems. Everyone who owns a luxury house, well, people say all of them have UBWs. If there is no imminent danger, the buildings department won't take action. Understand there is this garden on the peak. It was supposed to be a storeroom of 400 square feet. Now it's expanded to 5,000 square feet. And the entire Owners Incorporated came to see me, and we all went to the buildings department. And the owner said that if the entire project is sold, you would have to repay me for 4,000 or 5,000 square feet. And then it also hoarded up land belonging to the buildings department. What I want to say is, this is not a question of UBW. It has become a problem of integrity because she pretends not to know. If you all think that she pretends not to know, then there is a problem of integrity. Everyone can pretend not to know. It's just whether people trust you. Everybody in Hong Kong can pretend not to know. But then the one that cannot be trusted the most is Teresa Zhang because she is senior counsel, she is a civil engineer. She is the co-author of the book Construction Law and Practice in Hong Kong. I can claim I don't know about UBWs, but no one would trust me. And President, you can claim you don't know you have UBWs. But then for Teresa Zhang to say it, I mean, no one would trust her. And it's not just one. There are many. Heaven forbid. What is most tragic is that as of today, she continues to pretend. And then the CE pretends to trust her. Well, the CE says if that's the fact, she could only accept those are facts. And Mr. Xiu Kai-chun said there were 4 chances for her to right her wrong. Well, I'm not talking about righting any wrongs, but whether she knew in 2008 she moved in. Did she know it? She said no. We should ask her whether she knew there was a basement. I don't know whether she dared say no. She could claim that she was seldom in Hong Kong. She did not exactly use the basement. Well, if you watch a horror movie from Hollywood and then you were running around the house and suddenly you kicked open a door and you saw 10 corpses in the basement. You know, that happens. I don't know whether they have UBW laws in the United Kingdom. Sometimes the son may disappear in the house and they would be running around to look for him and then suddenly they open a door to see there is a basement. Of course, she dares not say that there was no basement. It's not a haunted house, of course, but she would say she did not know that the basement was a UBW. And then some women asked me, okay, you did not know when you moved in, then by 2012, when there was the Henry Tang saga, we saw cranes trying to film C.Y. Leung and Henry Tang, and they looked like transformers. And everybody in Hong Kong who owned land and houses would think about their own situation. And if she were here, I would ask her when C.Y. Leung and Henry Tang were in those situations, and I would ask her whether she thought about her own case, and then she would say I was too busy. And then if I asked her whether she read any news of Henry Tang, she would again say she was too busy. So she is continuing with her acting. She continues to pretend. And therefore, she had to engage an AP to tell her. Now, if she had rectified it on her own volition, then she would have admitted that she knew. But then she chose not to know. The thing is whether she was entitled to that choice. Well, okay, if you are innocent, you are not telling a lie, but still you are guilty. Of course, you are innocent. You may not be telling a lie, and then you can, of course, continue to prosecute her because she has committed an offense. But now she is pretending. That's the issue. There are many queries about this case. If she comes here to produce books, relevant papers, records, or documents, then Hong Kong people will be able to judge whether she did not know. First, I'm of the view that in this UBW saga of Teresa Zhang, one of the major queries is whether she really did not know that the 500 square feet basement was a UBW. You're a senior counsel. You're a civil engineer. You mean you use the basement every day? Well, frankly, 99% of basement in luxury houses are UBWs, and it's easy to solve our land problems, isn't it? You can dig out a basement in every house. Now, that is one of the queries. Since 2008, she has lived in this house for over 3,000 days, and she has paid 40 rates rounds, and she has furnished the basement, and she says she doesn't know it's a UBW. I have asked many engineers, both from the two camps, and then they said that they would not trust her. And of course, the CE said if that's the fact, she could only accept that those are facts. If Teresa Zhang comes here, she will be given sufficient time so we can ask her in detail how come she did not know. I want to know why she did not know. If she can prove she did not know, then she did not lie. It was just about UBWs, and it was just an integrity issue. I asked the CE whether she trusted Teresa Chang, that before she was told her properties in Repulse Bay, in Royal Ascot, and in Tuen Mun, and also in Fo Tan, she did not know about the UBWs. But then she was given so many opportunities. She did not even take a look. And then if she did not know, she could have asked people. But I don't think she did not know. And then I also asked CE. While she signed the assignment deed and the mortgage deed, did she make a false declaration? Because it's the deeds says that the person signing the deeds has already examined the document and also the house, and that it doesn't show a basement. And of course, the biggest issue here is lying. And if Teresa Chang signed those deeds showing the bank and other people that she examined the property and that in that property there were no UBWs outside the building plan, then it would show that the S4J claimed that there was no basement to the bank and the authorities. And if the SJ knew that there was a UBW, well, there was a basement, whether or not it was a UBW, then it would amount to a false declaration. But when we asked her, when she signed the mortgage deed, whether she knew there was a basement, she said she was not in Hong Kong, she did not know, she was too busy, she did not read the documents. And then at the special meeting of the AJLS panel, when members and Ms. Tanya Chan asked the most questions, she still refrained from coming clean. She's just said that she would take legal responsibility and that at the time of signing, she did not examine the property.
Such answers are not convincing. One cannot trust that when signing the mortgage deed or the assignment deed that there was no false declaration made on her part. According to the the mortgage deed, there was no reference to the basement. She must produce evidence that she actually had not made a false declaration when the mortgage deed was signed. Ms. Teresa Tan paid an unreasonable price to purchase the property in 2008 when we had the financial tsunami, when the Lehman Brothers collapsed, when he purchased this UBW property. It's a Villa de Mer. And the bank approved the mortgage application. When asked why she paid such a high price for the property, she said she liked this property where you have to spend lots of money to buy things you like. So don't ask me how much is this, because there is no second chance. Once it's missed, so the price was unreasonable. She was busy. She did not pay attention to the financial crisis. Well, such answers cannot be trusted, cannot be believed in. Another problem, which is more serious, whether before she purchased the property in an as-is condition, did she ask the former owner to carry out the UBWs? That is to say, I don't want to dirty my hand, and I will ask the previous owner to do it for me. President, give me another 15 minutes and it won't be sufficient for me to set out all the wrongdoing of Ms. Teresa Chan. Now, Mr. Charles MOK wants to refer to Article 70(5). We are building a platform for her to come clean. But for me, it's simple as that. I want to ask her to step down. At the weekend, we'll have a public gathering in a southern playground. We would march to the Justice Place and asked her to step down. Well, actually, she should have built this platform herself and give an account. Mr. Lee Hsien Loong, the Prime Minister of Singapore, had a quarrel with her siblings over his father's old residence. He arranged for a debate for members of the Parliament to ask questions of him. There was live TV broadcast. He wanted to be accountable to the public and allay all public concerns so that the public can have more confidence in the government and him. So it was done with his own resources. And now this council wants to build this platform with our resources and ask her to come to give an account. If she thinks that there's no question of integrity here, she could just come and show us the books and documents. And the CE has tried to explain on her behalf that she was busy. Well, she was able to save on stamp duty by utilizing the first property rule. So she knew when there's a channel to save money, but when it comes to UPWs, she was too busy to know. Well, this is a professional, and that's one of the senior officials in the SAR government. Mr. James too. I have noticed that there aren't many pro-establishment camp members here to listen to us. In the past, when we asked for someone to be summoned, the major figures in the pro-establishment camp will be here to listen. I'm not trying to belittle the status of Mr. Abraham Shek and Mrs. Regina Yip. The fact is that there aren't many of them here. What does it mean? Is it that the pro-establishment camp members don't know how to protect her? Just like what Mr. Paul Chair has said. Well, we don't. They may think that they have no idea about the truth, the underlying truth, or whether what the secretary has told us is true. Some members have decided, may have decided to give up on her and would ask her to go. But Hong Kong, what will Hong Kong people think about this? In the past month, we have seen many headlines and news reports on this. I have this feeling that the public have given up on her, or people have written off this official. Well, but of course she continues to be the Secretary for Justice, but not in the eye of the public. Or in the eye of the public, they don't regard her as a secretary with who command trust and credibility. I don't know what the government is thinking about this. This Chief Secretary for Administration just read out a prepared speech. When CE was asked whether she trusted the Secretary that he had not known the UPWs, the CE just said that I have to trust her. I continue to have trust in her. If that's what happened, that's what happened. But the CE is, of course, a capable person. If you have wronged her, she wouldn't just swallow it and and tolerate the matter. This is not in her character, but there's no choice really. This is really something unexpected, really out of everyone's imagination. If you say that this is really unbelievable, she will say, I agree, it's unbelievable. But the government is still behind the secretary. It's still supportive. I don't know what the government is doing now. Maybe they are trying to identify another suitable candidate for the time being, or they are waiting for a verdict to be made by Xi Jinping. Maybe Xi Jinping will direct her to carry out duties related to the Belt and Road Initiative, but nothing else. And then the government will back her. The pro-establishment camp members would ask her to do her best. This is really lamentable. Why do we have such a senior official put in such an awful situation? Some people will say that the pandemics would like to see this weakness in the government, and so that we can level criticisms as we wish. I don't know what other people think, but I'm old school, although I'm not a senior person in terms of age. But whether we like it or not, Hong Kong needs a government for law and order and other things. We need to have a system for Hong Kong people and for investors who come to invest in Hong Kong, or for something grander such as the reconstruction of China or and the development of the nation and so on. We need someone capable to take up the position as secretary. The current CE or the previous CE, C.Y. Leung, and the current S4J have made Hong Kong a depressed community, and it's really a sorrowful situation, in that whatever you say, no one trusts you or believes you. When we meet foreign guests, and when we ask about such scandals, well, we will not try to rub it in. Even pandemics wouldn't do that. But if you make Hong Kong such a depressed community, how can we convince other people that our system is all right? It's difficult. The feeling is very hard. People may think that I'm just pretending and I'm gleeing in secret. I still call her the secretary. She's still the secretary, but it's getting more and more difficult to address her as secretary. We're not talking about just UPWs. There are a few levels that we need to address. The public would like to know the truth. If the truth is that Ms. Territa Chan, an elite in the community, a senior counsel, seeing that there was a house with someone putting some UPWs there already, she liked it, she was very busy, she wanted to make a quick decision. Since the UPWs were there, therefore the house was worth 20 million plus, but not 10 million plus. But she was think that she did not take advantage of the situation. She paid more than $20 million instead of 10 odd million to buy the house. And at the time, she was not the secretary for justice. So when she became the secretary, she would take action to right the wrong. If that's the truth, you should come clean and tell the public everything. The lawyer said that I could purchase the property as a first-time buyer to save stamp duty, and of course I would go down that route. But is that person eligible to be secretary for justice? That's the arguable. Some people, some parts of our community, I would say up to half of our people, would think that if you come clean and then you promise that you will not be committed again, and people might be able to let you go because it's difficult to find a replacement. They may be willing to just let you continue and see how you perform, but that's not what the secretary did. She has been saying that she did not know UPWs, and that both the secretary herself and her husband were not authorized persons. It was stated in the deed, she didn't know. It was double the normal price, she didn't know. Then there are major problems here. If she insists that that was the case, then you are saying you are regarding the majority of Hong Kong people as stupid people. You are forcing the whole of Hong Kong to trust you, to believe that you didn't know.
And in her question time, the CE had to state in front of TV camera with the public watching that I trusted her. She didn't know. What a big lie. If that is permitted, then everything can be allowed. Our SJ has to deal with very important constitutional decisions, including whether to prosecute or not and how to prosecute. We need a high level of trust for this system. So when it comes to the decision to prosecute or not, in sensitive cases, in cases of concern in particular, it's not that the whole file can be exposed. But of course, for cases of grave public interest, of course, the more is disclosed, the better. Still, there are a lot of things where trust is called for. Madam Deputy, integrity vetting is also an issue. The integrity vetting is highly protected, and everything is hidden behind integrity vetting, claiming that it is highly confidential and nothing is reviewed using that excuse. Now, this is a very important person. Now, a few years ago, a CE candidate aroused a great concern over UBWs. And if you ask me to believe that during integrity checking, there was no question asked about there was anything to disclose, such as possession of UBWs or anything that would embarrass the government. If you ask me that to believe that the person in charge of integrity vetting would ask no such questions, then the whole government, that is all the officials, that assumed office in July last year could not be trusted because, as colleagues read out in 2012, I asked a question and the reply from the government was it would improve things. If that question was put to the SJ, what was her answer? If her reply was no, then it was really a big deal. And if people ask if she would cause any embarrassment to the government because she was about to resume office, shouldn't she think about it back then? And then, according to Ming Pao, she was approached on the 27th of December, and she didn't assume office until the 5th of January. Did she deal with that crisis with the administration? Did she even deceive Carrie Lam? Now, if she didn't come clean to the administration in those few days, what was her intention? Is it that you are protected by Xi Jinping? It's been a year, it's been a week, and people have put that questions to you. And if the government were in the know and there was no intention to manage the crisis, couldn't she defer or postpone her assumption of office? I can only say that the public has already written over this SJ. We are in the status of no SJ in government. Does any other member wish to speak? Does any other member wish to speak? If not, Mrs. Regina Ip. I apologize, Madam Chair. I pressed the button a little bit late. I fully understand the sentiments of members who have spoken just now. As an elected member of the council, in particular, my party has fielded a candidate to run in a by-election, and every day we have heard comments from the community. I find myself in a difficult position, but I think the government has a point. Yes, UBWs are very common in Hong Kong. I have to declare that I don't have any UBW at home. But because Hong Kong is such a small place, we all want to have a bigger space at home. And it's not just the SJ of Mr. Tang or Mr. Leung have UBWs, even Mr. Zimmerman and academics and also members of this council have got UBWs at home. I don't want to name members of this council, but according to media reports, even ex-government officials have got UBWs at home. I understand that before the SJ assumed office, just like many people in Hong Kong, she had UBWs at home. Of course, I don't know when she accepted the offer to be SJ in the SAR government, but from what I heard but the impression I got from the CE's speech was that she decided to take up this offer in a very rash manner. It was only very shortly before the announcement was made. Of course, that is far from desirable. In particular, she has engineering and legal background. As lawyers say, ignorance is not a defense, nor is being too busy a defense. Of course, we understand the concerns of the public. However, Ms. Teresa Zhang indeed is a very competent and experienced person, and she
is a self-made engineer, and she is a very senior and experienced arbitrator. She has very high standing in the international arbitration scenario, and the SL government is very eager that we have competent persons to serve the government. As I've already said to people, the most challenging job in this government is the SJ, and I can understand why the CE doesn't want to change the hold of this post. In particular, we have some important pieces of legislation waiting to be handled. The legislation on co-location arrangement received its first reading last week, and the BC committee is going to activate its work very soon. And we have also got other important pieces of legislation waiting to be handled. And I noticed that the CE said that the appointment has been made and approval from Beijing has been given, and she has no intention to change the incumbent officer. Of course, I do not accept that if you're too busy. I agree that being too busy or ignorance is not a defense. Of course, I won't say that the current secretary is ignorant, but in this government, we need experienced persons to handle very important issues, and we have important work ahead of us. And I tend to agree with our CE to give Ms. Teresa Zhang a chance. It's just like Mr. Paul Chen, the FS, he ran into similar problems before he assumed office. He was the subject of malicious attacks, but I really admire him for braving all these criticism. And then at the relevant panel, when I put rather difficult questions to him, he was able to answer them. Although Mr. Paul Chen used to be an accountant, he worked very hard as a secretary for development, and then he rode over the difficult period. So I think we should give someone who is dedicated to serve and who is competent a chance. And for general interest, I would not support this motion to summon the SJ. Besides, she will have ample opportunities to meet with the council. There's no fear. Next week, the co-location arrangement bills committee will have its first meeting next week, and then we will start our work very soon. And obviously, the SJ will come to meet us and discuss with us important issues, and she will face a lot of questions. So there is no need to summon her by invoking Article 75 of the Basic Law. This, because by so doing, will cause a lot of shockwaves within the government, and I think we should support her work. The New People's Party will not support this motion. Does any other member wish to speak? Mr. Abraham Sheck. Madam Deputy, as you can see, I have been sitting here, and Mr. Charles MOK moved his motion under Article 73(5) of the Basic Law, and I've listened to 3 or 4 members from the opposition camp, Ms. Alvin Young, Mr. Shiu Ka-chen, Mr. Chen Chi-chun, and Mr. James To, speaking on this motion. Article 73(5) will empower us to raise questions on the work of the government, and 73(5) is to summon SJ to testify or give evidence. There is nothing wrong with this appointment because under the Basic Law, the our country has already approved this appointment, so we do not have the right to challenge her appointment, because even MPCSC has already approved or appointed her to be the SJ, and 73.5 is irrelevant. And how can we summon her to testify under 73.5? Yes, these 4 members were correct. They detailed the procedures, but there is no need to invoke Article 73.10 to ask the SJ to testify, because the SJ has given us a very clear account of when and how she purchased those properties, and not just at the radio. She spent 2 hours at a panel meeting, AJLS meeting, on this subject. In fact, that need not be, because the issue was not relevant to the scope of the HLS panel. Still, she spent 2 hours discussing with us. Well, even there's no need for her to present the mortgage documents, because they've all been reported in the media. There is no need to do so. So, if we are to invoke Article 73.5 and 10, well, we will have to consider our position here. There is no reason, we can have no reason to support their motion. Well, even if whether she purchased a property under her company's name or her own name, well, as early as back as 7 years ago, I've been saying that this is an option available to purchasers by the government. She exercised her right to acquire property as a first-time home buyer. So even if you ask her to come and tell us 100 times facts are facts, whether she does so under oath is still the same. Mr. Alvin Young talked about disqualification of legislators, but she was acting in accordance with her duties and the law.
So, Mr. President, the BPA will not support this motion. Ms. Sarili, yes, Mr. Charles MOK? Mr. President, just now, I noticed that Madam Deputy already asked if any other member wished to speak, and then she asked the Secretary to speak, and then later Mrs. Regina Ip stood up to speak, and then while Ms. Darili was still acting as deputy up there, she pressed a button requesting to speak. I think there's a serious problem here. How could the deputy do such thing? Is it because she wanted to speak that she delayed the matter instead of allowing the Secretary to reply? Well, Mr. Charles MOK, this is not a point of order, but I think this is serious. Mr. Charles MOK, well, that means that you're all on the same team. What is your point of order? Please be seated. Be seated. Just now during the third reading, when I asked if anyone wished to speak, I was looking at Dr. Helena Wong. She didn't indicate anything, and then when I turned around asking the Secretary to reply, she then requested to speak, and I allowed her. Sorry, speaker's not coming through. Mr. Lee, as a member of this council, has the right to speak. Why shouldn't I let her speak? She wants to speak, and that's why I am in this seat now. Please be seated. Mr. Charles MOK. Mr. Lee. Mr. President, I don't understand why Mr. Charles MOK is so angry. Even if I am deputy, I have the right to speak. Well, I was being fair. I asked if members would like to speak. And then when I asked the Secretary to reply, Mrs. Regina Ip then stood up, and I understood that she wanted to speak. I wanted to ask, I wanted a chance to speak as well. I don't see why you think there's a problem. I'm sorry. I want to make use of the time that I want to speak, and I don't want people to have the impression that we want to shun this chance of speaking. I ask you not to deprive me of my opportunity to speak. Well, today this motion is to invoked Articles 73, bracket 5 and 10 to summons the Secretary for Justice to attend before the Council and produce papers, documents, etc. Well, the Secretary for Justice is an accountability official. She is a crucial figure. Well, in terms of a government official with public power, public has high expectations. It is understandable because every decision made by a public officer affects the society as a whole. It affects every citizen and even our next generation. That is why, right after Secretary assumed office, this scandal happened. And I could say that this is really misfortune. When, well, I was asked by the media at first whether I knew Teresa Chang, and I said no. Before she assumed office, I did not ever have a chance to meet her officially. And after she assumed office, initially, there had never been any contact between us. We never had any conversation. But I think that in general, those who know her have a quite positive impression of her. They believe she is the right candidate as Secretary for Justice because in terms of her achievements in promoting arbitration and her contribution to the legal sector, her effort is widely acknowledged. And she also took up other public positions before. I was delighted because I thought that it is very difficult to find the right candidate to take up this really controversial post. She must be a candidate who has the trust of the Central People's Government as well as the people in Hong Kong. And yet, the day she assumed office, the media exposed her UBWs at home. And it's really disappointing the way Secretary had dealt with the issue. It's been more than a month, and this has brought on some impact on herself as well as the whole government. It's really unfortunate. After media reports for days and after the Secretary came out to explain to the public many times, I think that by and large the public already has a judgment on the matter. Well, I'm disappointed in how the Secretary dealt with the issue in two ways. First, her negligence. Before she decided to take up the post as Secretary for Justice, she failed to cleanse herself, so to speak, to deal with the UBWs properly. And second disappointment comes in the way she dealt with the issue after it was exposed, such that the scandal continued to escalate, and we now understand that the Secretary already paid a hefty political price for the matter. Well, she is a professional, she's an elite, and it's really hard to come by chance for her to agree to take up this position in the hot kitchen. And she also needs to get used to our political environment. I can say that the Secretary has underestimated how hot this kitchen is. Well, take a look at this administration. Most of the government officials or public PA officials came from a civil service background. And that is why we can see that other elites in the community are probably afraid of entering this kitchen. For somebody who is unfamiliar with politics to enter the political arena as a PA official, it's very, very easily people would use a magnifying glass to look at every deed that this person has done. It's a difficult position or difficult decision. But once the Secretary has made such a decision, she should have properly examined herself. And she, however, wasn't physically or mentally ready for this post. As we often advise our election candidates, one should always cleanse themselves before joining the political circle. So it seems there is still a long way to go in the learning process to becoming the Secretary. However, on numerous occasions, the Secretary already explained and apologized to the public. She also attended LegCo meetings a number of times to answer members' questions. I don't agree that we should try Mr. Charles MOK's way of summoning the Secretary to testify here. I just hope that the Secretary can learn a lesson, because it is still a thorny path for this government with a lot of challenging tasks, and many of the issues will have to be dealt with exclusively by the Secretary for Justice, such as the collocation arrangement and enacting legislation for the national anthem. I really hope, Secretary, that you would learn a lesson and then make use of your professional knowledge and your expertise to safeguard one country, two systems in Hong Kong, and also salvage the public's support for you. This incident, Mr. President, also reveals the integrity checking conducted by the government on potential PA officials before they are appointed. In fact, this question is put by a lot of members of the public. We should take preventive measures so that when something goes wrong, you will not get hurt so badly. We can see, however, on this occasion, the integrity check failed to help in any way this matter, and the government's attempt could not help diffuse this political crack. In fact, many people understand that the unauthorized building works is the lethal weapon, politically speaking. But it's really wishful thinking that everyone should stay clear of the matter. In fact, many political figures, many election candidates, even members of this council are involved in UBWs, including Claudia Mo and Mr. Lam Cheuk Ting. According to newspaper reports, they are also involved with UBWs. And according to newspaper reports, the garage is converted as part of the residential unit, and it is not rectified yet. Of course, the most talked about news is Mrs. Zimmerman, the candidate running for the functional constituency, to have found, yes, Ms. Sari Lee, please wait, Mr. Jeremy Tam. As Mr. Paul Zimmerman is a candidate for the election, I don't think it's appropriate to use his platform in the Legislative Council to discuss any election candidate. I understand that we have election candidates, but I think that Sari Lee was just referring to media reports, so I would allow Ms. Sari Lee to continue. But Ms. Sari Lee, please be careful. Well, we're just debating on current affairs. This is in the public domain. I'm familiar with the electoral law as well. Apart from Mr. Paul Zimmerman, his contestant is Mr. Tony Chair. And anyway, there were encumbrances registered with the Buildings Department, and not until the recent election, when he decided to become a candidate, did he remove the UBWs. He comes from a professional background. He has the knowledge, and he also is in the functional constituency. Well, please pause, Ms. Sari Lee, Mr. Jeremy Tam. Ms. Sari Lee, please pause. Question? Mr. Jeremy, no. Well, Ms. Sari Lee keeps on saying that he is taking part in the election. I find this problematic. If you don't think this would affect his prospect of election, I think your ruling is problematic. I'm not stopping her, but if you continue to talk about somebody and then point fingers at him, accusing him of the wrongs, then I don't think it's right. I remind members once again that we have an upcoming election. Please be careful when you talk about the election. Of course, I understand that there is numerous reporting in the press. Ms. Sari Lee, please point out which rule I have breached in the ROP, because I think this is relevant. Mr. Charles MOK, you are chairman of the Electoral Commission, and Ms. Sari Lee, deputy of the Electoral Commission, and we already agreed that no
electioneering campaign should be mounted in this chamber, or that words should not be uttered to undermine the chance of another candidate. In fact, there was a letter issued by the Electoral Commission explaining the matter to members. Please think carefully, Mr. President. If this is allowed, of course, she's free to say anything. I don't understand why you would stop her. You should draw a clear line. I remind members once again that members should not make any speech that may be perceived as facilitating or prejudicing a candidate in winning the election. I hope members would be careful in their speeches. Mr. Lee, Mr. President, all right. You see, in the opposition camp, the other side, blatant breach of the law, no integrity at all. That's the slogan. I just want to say that not only one official is involved in UBW scandals. We should be fair and do some soul searching. When we criticize another, we should think whether we criticize somebody from our own camp as well. And Mr. Charles MOK, who moved the motion today, defend the gentleman that I just referred to. He said that he already came out to explain, and he did take rectification. So on the one hand, the other side seemed to be going after the Secretary for Justice. On the other hand, they adopt double standards for a member of their own. So it's not convincing. On the other hand, in Mr. Charles MOK's motion, I noticed that apart from summoning the Secretary for Justice, he also asked for the information relating to the company or companies related to or under her business name. Well, we also notice media reports, but we need to uphold a certain standard.
In the
news, they would often come up with pieces that would interest readers, but there's no evidence as of now showing how any of the SJ's husband's properties are improper or inappropriate. It's not acceptable to request such information using the Electoral Public Privileges Ordinance. The SJ has explained the matter, and she also apologized, and she promised to rectify the unauthorized works. We should allow her to recover the lost time and try to show what she can do. And Mr. Charles MOK's motion is unnecessary, and the public would make a judgment for themselves on this issue. There were inadequacies on the SJ's part, and the issue has been made political. No matter what further information is provided by the SJ, the opposition would not be satisfied. I realize that the opposition serves to make this matter political. Apart from targeting the SJ, they also want to delay the SJ's work. And as such, the SAR government has to spend a lot of effort in mitigating the crisis. With the election coming up, they want to create unfavorable news for our camp. In recent weeks, we dealt with a number of motions of summons, and this time we are seeking to summon the SJ, and same for the year before, and 2 weeks before, the Secretary for Development, and the week before that, the Commissioner of Police. So we should consider how our society would benefit from these summoning motions. We should stop making matters political and proceed to the motion on reindustrialization. So I speak against Mr. Charles MOK's motion. Mr. Kent Lau.